closing in now, hard to believe really, the 2-month mark now of the worst, most destructive storm in North Carolina's history, of course, Hurricane Helene, and all the rains that came before it that made that disaster all the much worse. Naomi's been working very hard here for the past month or so, putting together a documentary that's going to air Monday night at 7 o'clock during On Your Side Tonight, really walking us through all that happened, especially in the early hours of that storm. So we want to take a couple of minutes here today to talk to Naomi about that and everything that you're going to see Monday night at 7 o'clock. There's so much to talk about. I've seen the special, and it is an amazing work, and it's really important, I think, that people watch it. Why do you think it was important to sort of do it in this kind of format?
You know, we spent so much time, and when I say we, let me just pause really quick. My photo, you know, this is not just me. You don't see my photographer here, but Alex Laitla, our special projects photojournalist, has just been phenomenal and really done a lot of the heavy lifting. He's the guy that has to carry the camera. I just have to walk around and be like, hey, talk to me, right? But, you know, we were so immersed in just the grind of daily reporting and getting a story on air every day, those first few weeks. And we just collected so much, and we spent so much time on the road that it's hard. You lose the forest for the trees, right? Sure. You focus so much on each individual story, and we wanted to find a way to put that into perspective and just put the whole thing together, the big picture of just that chaos that unfolded that first weekend, that first week, and in the weeks to follow. And obviously, you know, we're under you know, no misconception that this is still ongoing for months to come.
And that's the thing about it, right? Because when it hit, it becomes this, it's almost slow motion in a way, but then it became very quickly developing, right?
Yeah.
And I think to understand all the dynamics that were at play that led us to that point of hillsides coming down, of rivers going far beyond anything we'd ever seen before, and you kind of explained some of that throughout this documentary.
Yeah, you are not prepared as a reporter to see the aftermath of a landslide. You're not prepared as a human to see that, right? You can see that in the drone footage playing right now. It just, you know, these landslides that took so many lives. And I remember, you know, we interviewed our chief meteorologist, Al Conklin, for the piece, and he got into things that you don't really hear on TV as much, right? When you see him on TV, he's talking about the daily news.
Right.
When I was able to sit down and talk with him about the science behind what was happening, the science of how these landslides are happening and just destroying everything in their path, it's quite fascinating. I told him later, you're pretty good on TV.
Might want to make it a career, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
Right, yeah.
But it's, you know, on a more serious note though, just seeing that on a day-by-day basis when you're actually out there and talking to people and then trying to put this together into things that folks at home can actually make sense of, it's tough. And you see that kind of in your mind's eye for days and weeks and months after.
Talk to me a little bit about the challenge as a reporter being up there. Obviously, you're dealing with just the physical issues of getting around, trying to get to some of these scenes. Describe that a little bit, but then there's also, I think, the ethical dilemmas that you deal with along the way. This isn't exploitive in any way, but how you kind of balance all of that.
Well, some of that was on our managers. I talk about this in a piece I just posted online, a reporter's notebook, but I want to take back to the beginning. I've been doing this since 2 a.m., the actual first day Helene hit. I was the morning reporter shift, and you know, that first day I was in Charlotte, right? Easy to get to. We're obviously based in Charlotte. I was reporting from the evacuation zone where dozens would later lose their homes. And I just remember, you know, I'm not used to covering hurricanes. I'm from the Midwest.
Right, tornadoes every now and again, that may be about it, right?
And I just remember like this is a bad storm, but in Charlotte it did not feel bad, right? And it wasn't until later that day, that first Friday, that those first images started coming out from off the mountains, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Banner Elk and places like that, Lake Lure, right?
What is happening? And that first weekend was really where, you know, our managers had to get into all these emergency meetings figuring out how do we get reporters to places where the roads are cut off. When you don't have cell service or internet, how do you turn stories and make deadline for the 4 o'clock and the 5 o'clock and the 6 o'clock newscast? How do you contact the people that you need to reach to interview? And juggling all of that, also mind you, this is all 3 hours away from home base in Charlotte. Airbnbs, hotels, most of them aren't accepting guests. The whole thing is a tremendous logistical challenge. But then on the ethical side of things, you're going into places where the state has asked people not to go, right? It was very clear those first few weeks, if you don't live there, if you don't have a reason to be there, you shouldn't be traveling there. And at the same time, we are the people who chronicle the history. And back in the pandemic, we were essential employees. That classification applies, and people were begging us to tell their stories. But at the same time, as a news crew, you don't want to be washed off the side of a road and having to take the resources of a search and rescue crew. And I think, the way that we ultimately met that challenge to a degree is getting in the pickup trucks of the people, of the first responders and the search and rescuers and the residents who wanted us there, and just going with them as they delivered the supplies and searched for people, and, trying to not be as little of a burden as possible and leave as small of a footprint as possible.
How do you explain them wanting to talk about this? Because sometimes, everybody deals with these kinds of things in a different way, right? Some might just kind of go in, inside. I don't want to talk about other things I've seen over the last, week or two here. But a lot of folks did want to open up to you. Why do you think they did? That?
I don't know. If I were them, I wouldn't talk to me.
Right?
I think about that so often. I wouldn't talk to a camera if I'd just been through the worst thing of my life. And so credit the people who just opened up and shared just some of the most tremendous stories with me and Alex those first few weeks.
But I think it's also, some of it, Naomi, is they want us to remember, because you said down here in Charlotte, it can be easy to sort of become disconnected from all of this.
Yeah.
Hey, we're still up here high on the mountain, and it's awful, right?
Yes.
And I think it was important for us to see that, and maybe that's part of why they wanted to share their story.
You heard in one of the quotes in one of the sound bites in the documentary coming up is, don't forget us. These mountain towns, these small mountain communities that maybe only cross your mind when you're looking to find a winery on a nice summer day in the mountains. Don't forget us through the winter. Don't forget who we are and what we've been through. And I think that, to your point, is the driving motivation for so many of the people we talk to is, we've got to get this story off the mountains. Yeah. We've got to share it with people larger than us.
Yeah, and the strength of these folks
is
going to come through this, and that's what I think really people got to pay attention to, is watching and listening to the stories, because it's not all about the images that we've all seen here for the past month. Yeah. It's about hearing their stories and everything that they've gone through.
Yeah, and to that point, I've talked about this before, but you'll see a lot of that disaster footage in the documentary. It's obviously all over, but we didn't try to minimize it, but we tried to be moderate in how we used it, because you've seen it all on your phones and your laptops and your TV screens for the last 2 months. And what we wanted to shine was the voices and the stories and the people, not just the next car that was turned upside down.
Yeah. It's really important, because as you pointed out at the very beginning, when you're in the day-to-day news coverage, 2 or 3 minute blocks at a time, over a week period, it's kind of hard to connect it all together. What this documentary does is it connects it all together for you. And it's just terrific work. And Naomi, we're looking forward to it. Again, it's Monday night, 7 o'clock, special edition of On Your Side Tonight. I hope you can join us. It is really, really impactful reporting and journalism that you don't see very often. And you and Alex did a terrific job telling it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it.